Hey, it's Teresa. Subscribe for more horror stories. When people started moving to the moon, there was a lot of hesitation. People were skeptical, and they had their fears about leaving their precious planet Earth. But by the time people started settling in 2 more planets, much more distant and unknown, life on the moon couldn't have been a more normal and safer experience. At the beginning, people had worried about failure in the artificial atmosphere and gravity, the quality of food and water, things like that. But to be completely honest, a lot of people used to be plainly terrified of aliens. It took a while for humanity to get over that fear, jump in hundreds of ships, and settled their new homes on the moon. But when they finally did, they never looked back. More people arrive on the moon every day. Life is thriving. Very few people remember the years when passengers demanded the company of soldiers to even dare set foot in spaceships. General Aaron Levi is one of those people. He joined the army at the beginning of the transition to the moon. He gave the best years of his life protecting humanity from threats that never gave signs of even existing at all. Aaron didn't complain, though. At 68 years of age, he looked about 10 years younger. Although his hair was nearly entirely white, his body remained healthy and strong enough as if he expected to be called in for action any day. Except that he didn't. He never believed in aliens. He joined the army because he believed in protecting people, especially those he loved most. In some way, it paid off. Humanity was living safe and soundly on the moon. Most importantly, his wife, children, grandchildren, and older sister also had perfectly comfortable and happy lives around him. Aaron could calmly live the rest of his days, marveling at the small garden he was still surprised to be able to harvest on the moon's surface. Life was good. Life, however, was about to be violently thrown upside down for Aaron and all of humanity. There were so many years filled with fear and excitement and conspiracy theories of all kinds. Everyone wanted to believe they saw an alien spacecraft flying above them. Nobody wanted to imagine what happened if aliens didn't arrive quite like that. There was so much discussion about alien spaceships, how to understand, attack, or protect humans from them. People didn't even imagine what it would look like if they had to face the plague that eventually arrived. General Aaron Levi was, as usual, working on the backyard of his house that he believed tried to imitate old homes on Earth a little too obviously. His wife Betty, who was 4 years younger, was inside the house working on little pajamas for their newest grandson. Sewing machines were almost gone, but people still wanted to create, so they still existed. A couple of streets away, Aaron's older sister, Michelle, stubbornly lived by herself in a smaller house, refusing to give in and accept the help and company from her niece Sarah, a musician that visited as often as possible. Then there was Aaron's son, Owen, along with his wife Alice, and their 2 children, Billy and Charlie, 7 and 2 years old respectively. They couldn't have been more of a normal family, happily living on the moon if they'd tried. But then, in the blink of an eye, normalcy and happiness didn't exist anymore. The emergency alarms were delayed. All the radars were equipped to detect signals from any and all types of spaceships. They weren't prepared for that. A sudden, massive, powerful, unstoppable mass of unknown creatures flying fast toward the moon. At first, it looked like nothing but a spot in the sky. A darkening, growing cloud moving closer and closer. But then the alarm started. Meteorological emergency. Safety emergency. biological emergency, everything, anything, whatever it was bad news. Mass hysteria was nearly immediate. Everyone walked out of their houses to look up at the sky and try to figure out what was going on. Aaron, who had been outside from the beginning, had to take a split-second decision. A moment longer could cost him his life, or worse, his family's lives. He considered staying put until he could figure out what was the threat, but immediately decided that if there was a threat at all, then there was nothing to wait for. He stormed into the house and found his wife. "Honey, listen to me very carefully," Aaron said, schooling his tone to display the gravity of the situation, but reassure her that they would be fine as long as she would listen to him this once. "An unidentified threat is coming to the moon. There's no time to waste. I'm going to need you to forget the standard protocol for emergencies. We're following my plan for emergencies. You know the one." "Oh, well, fuck," Betty stuttered. She stood up from her little chair, and her legs trembled a little. She wasn't in the army like Aaron. She was just a grandmother. She was just an old lady. But if there was something she had carefully memorized in all her years of life, was her husband's plans for emergencies. That small moment was the last moment of hesitation that Betty showed. In an instant, the two of them jumped into action. Aaron had military training, and his wife had every step of the plan memorized. She picked up the bags they always had ready. He picked up the weapons. She prepared the car. He locked up the house. She started driving. He started loading up his guns. It was time to fight for their lives. As soon as they made it out of their driveway, they noticed how fast everything was happening. The ominous cloud was looming closer than ever, almost darkening the entire sky. It was so close that they could finally see what it was. It was a colony, not of insects, but some monstrous type of creature. There must be millions of them floating up there preparing to attack, but the attack had already started. One by one, those monsters were diving down to the moon's surface and starting to wreak havoc. All over the sky, these creatures flew from one side to the other at incredible speed. The streets started to fill with screams of terror. Soon enough, the first explosions were heard. Then everything got much, much worse. Because people started fighting back. The army that had prepared for so long for something like this finally had a reason to go all out. But the shooting and the bombs and the explosions only made it all worse. The creatures started freaking out, and they began descending from the sky at a much faster pace. Betty drove the car faster. Aaron rolled down his window. The first stop was Aaron's sister's house. But they weren't the first ones to arrive. The shock of the scene in front of them was almost enough to give the poor old couple a heart attack each. Betty hit the brakes of the car, and they both held their breath. In front of Michelle's house was Sarah's car, and on top of it was one of the creatures. Wild outrage, it jumped and made the small vehicle shake, grabbing it with the few pairs of massive claws. From up close, they could see the beast. It was like a bat of a size larger than a human, but with so many of the characteristics of a horrendous wasp, including a stinger, antenna, and 6 pairs of legs. Sarah must have driven there as soon as the crisis began, but she hadn't made it out of the car. Despite the chaos all around them, Aaron could distinguish his daughter's cries. He heard her cry since she was a baby. He lost sleep over her countless times. That was his baby, and she was trapped in a car under an alien beast trying its hardest to devour what it wanted. With his heart beating wildly on his chest, but with confident and deliberate movements, Aaron got out from his car. He picked up one of his best guns, an army model that resembled a shotgun. Powerful, but with an emphasis on precision. He aimed, shot, and watched the monster scream and contort its body in agony, spilling bubbly green blood all over the small car underneath. And finally, it fell heavily on the road. Once the creature was neutralized, a few things happened at once. Aaron ran toward the car, Sarah got out of it, and the two of them embraced. Old Michelle ran out of her house and straight toward the back of her brother's car, where Betty passed her a gun. Then all of them saw a pair of headlights rushing at full speed toward them. They were scared for a second, but then someone poked out of the passenger seat window, and they saw Alice. She was pointing a really big gun at them, at a spot above their heads. Aaron and Sarah looked up at that exact second that Alice shot, one of the monsters coming directly at them. Blood was splattered all over their cars and the father and daughter in the middle of the road, but they were saved. "Dad!" Owen yelled from the driver's seat window. "I'm so scared." He laughed a little out of confusion and hysteria, but meant every word. "I know, son," Aaron replied. "Let's get out of here." They were back in action. In one car, Owen and his small family, and in the other, Aaron with his wife, daughter, and sister. And they were moving as fast as their cars could take them. The monsters apparently recognized threats, and the Levi family had already killed 2 of them. Those creatures started chasing their cars, and one by one, Aaron and his daughter-in-law were shooting them down. But it would never be over. It would be difficult for the entire army on the moon to defeat the threat. The only option was to leave. "What about everyone else?" Sarah asked her father from her place on the back seat next to her beloved aunt. "I don't have an answer for that, darling," Aaron replied. He was a general. Everything he did in his life was to protect the people around him. But this was much bigger than him. Eventually, they arrived at one of the army's bases. It looked exactly like Aaron had imagined. Pure chaos, but, at the very least, a little hopeful. Because that was their exit. That was where emergency spaceships were taking off every second, saving as many people as they could. That was where General Aaron Levi pushed every member of his family into a small ship and stood by the door with tears in his eyes. "You don't have to do this," his wife said. Dad, we love you," his son added. "I have to," Aaron replied. "I prepared myself my entire life for this." He took one last look at his family and managed to smile. "Why are you all crying? I'll see you soon, and I love you all." "Goodbye, General." His daughter Sarah hugged him one last time. General Aaron Levi turned away from the ship and started heading towards the armory. He took care of his family first, and now it's time to eliminate the threats on the moon.